Hello and welcome from PATA headquarters in Bangkok to wherever you may be today. Thanks for joining us on this second webinar on PATA mPOWER and the joys and powers that it brings us in terms of next generation business decision-making tool. So we've already given you last week an overview on what mPOWER can do for your business, and today we're joined by John Podolsky, who's going to take us through the indicators, some of the indicators that you can find within mPOWER. And these today we're going to cover include traveller, expenditure and forecasts. And within the traveller range, it's mainly to do with international comings and goings. So join us over the next 45 minutes or so for John's drilling down into these particular things and a really good expose and a how-to in terms of better performance in getting more out of PATA mPOWER for your business. So over to you, John, and just bear in mind all the attendees today, you will be in listen-only mode, but that doesn't mean you can't fire in your questions. Just type in your questions on screen as you go, as they come to you, and John will field those questions at the end. So here he is, Mr. John Podolsky.
Thanks, Stu. Good afternoon, everybody, or morning or evening, depending on where you may be. I have with me two other members of the Strategic Intelligence Centre. I have Kun Aim and Kun Ong, and Kun Aim will be the one working the mouse as we work through this. Now, what you're seeing here is the home page, the landing page, if you will, for mPOWER. And you'll see that there are a number of elements in there, PATA TV, PATA advocacy, international visitor arrivals, PATA events, and so forth. Now these rotate on a regular basis once you move out of this home page and come back. So it won't look the same every time you land. Other things will move up into slots 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. But today we're looking at, as Stu mentioned, some of the key indicators that mPOWER will bring to you, including traveller numbers, traveller expenditures, and some forecasts. So we'll start actually with travellers, and if you click on the left-hand side, what we've got here, for example, is international visitor arrivals to Asia Pacific, broken down by each of those sub-regions you see there. The Americas, the blue column, the red column being Asia, and the green column being the Pacific. These all relate to the left-hand axis. So this is the number of arrivals in the years 2009, 2010, and 2011, expressed in millions. And you can see that on top of each bar is the actual numeric showing you what that number is. As Kun Aim has done now, if you roll the mouse cursor over the figure, it will actually give you a fuller numeric rather than the truncated version you see in the actual visual. Now on the right-hand side, we have year-on-year percentage change, and this relates to the lines moving through this particular graphic. So you can see there's Asia in 2010 saw an increase of just over 11%, in 2011 5.85%, and so forth. What you can do is, if you want to use this or other graphics and charts like it, you can actually export this. So if you're preparing a report, you can actually export either the data as a comma-separated variable, or CSV, or you can actually export in a number of images, including PNG, JPEG, TIFF, and even scalable vector graphics, SVG. So you can make it as all-encompassing or as bare as you like. Now in this case, we've got both the numbers, the blocks, and also the percentage change. If you go down to the legend, where you see, for example, the Americas, if you click on that in the legend, that takes it out of the picture. If you click on Asia, that takes that out, and the Pacific and so forth. So you can be left with just the percentage growth terms. If you re-click on each of those, of course they come back. And you can do the same, obviously, with the percentages. So if you don't want those in there, you can just click and remove them. Now, as I said, these are all exportable as well. The one thing you need to be very aware of is that when we talk about visitor arrivals in an aggregate sense, there's no real issue or there's no real problem. As you'll see as we move later, there are two ways of measuring international visitor arrivals to a particular destination. Some may record them as a country of nationality. Others will record them as country of residence. So you do need to be fairly aware of just what measure is being utilized by a particular destination. And what I mean by that is if we can go and have a look now just at Thailand, for example, so clear all, and then we go into Asia and to Southeast, click on that, yeah, click on Thailand. You'll see we have the numerics for Thailand. Now you need to be, and we'll get into some more detail, very aware, as I said, as to whether it's by nationality or whether it's by residence. This comes into play when you really start talking about IVAs by origin market, which is, as you can see over there. And again, here we're talking about multiple sources for Thailand. So we've got Africa, Americas, Asia, Europe, and the Pacific into Thailand over the years 2008 through 2012, which will be a forecast as listed there. What I want to draw your attention to is that this is nationality, not residence. So it means, for example, that, a German who may be living in Japan who comes into Thailand is actually classified and counted as a German national. So there is a slight discrepancy depending upon whether it's by residence or nationality. Generally, that's fairly small, but it comes into play when, for example, a destination may measure arrivals from the Middle East by country of residence. Now, they may be living in the Middle East and they may travel to an Asia-Pacific destination, but it doesn't mean that they all necessarily speak and understand Arabic. So you don't run out and produce 100,000 brochures in Arabic because the markets may actually be English-speaking or German-speaking. They just happen to reside in the Middle East. Now, we can actually take this even further if we go into select origins. And you can see if we move that over and get, for example, the Americas, so the origin. Yeah. And we can get rid of Africa, get rid of the Americas, and select the destination. Look at Asia. Select destination. Southeast Asia. So here you're starting to see in these charts the difference between residence and nationality. The difference there being, for example, in 2008, the blue bar and the green bar both represent Asia, but it shows you the difference in destinations in Southeast Asia, how many report by residence and how many report by nationality. Now, we can do this for a number of years. It doesn't have to always be that as specified there, so we can change the dynamics to from 2000 and say 2009. to, say, 2011. What was that little signal that came up? Try that again, because it's telling us something different. We lost connection, have we? Technical support is coming over to help us out here. For some reason, we seem to, and if you're watching, you saw that come up. We seem to have lost some sort of connection. So, no, we're back again. We don't know what happened. It decided to clear itself. Data, like technology, isn't always clean and beautiful. When it works, it's a delight, and when it doesn't, obviously, it's not. Now, the point of all of this is that you have a number of variables that you can play with. You can vary the years that you're looking at. You can look at it by quarter, by month, and play around with the data. You can also look at all the various individual origins. So if we go here, for example, if we're talking about clicking the indicators, you can see we can pick them all to get all the numerics, or we can say we're only interested in those countries that record by residents. If you look at the next one over, the origins, you can see that within any particular grouping, if we go there to, say, to Asia, and if we click on Northeast Asia and expand it, you can see that you have a number of actual individual origin markets that you can look at to a specific destination or to a group of destinations. Now, what this enables you to do is that you can, for example, pick one origin market and see where have China travellers gone to in the last few years within Asia Pacific. Okay. And you can do this by, this is Southeast Asia in this case. So you can begin to group them as you see fit. If we pick a particular destination, go to, for example, or a number of destinations, go to Southeast Asia and pick all of the countries that are listed there. Open that up, yeah. And so if you just click on, say, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, you're telling the machinery that you want to do that. No, because we've actually gone in and we've done multiple to one. Yeah. So try one to multiple. Okay. That's Africa. We want to go to Southeast Asia. Oh, sorry, to Northeast Asia. Yeah. Let's pick China. Then we begin to see China as a source market coming into the Americas, coming into Asia, coming into the Pacific for a number of years. So what this enables you to do, obviously, is by selecting one or two or three source markets, you can begin to look at your competitive position. You can say that, okay, well, within Asia, how are we doing? If we drill down a bit deeper, if we look at Thailand, what's Thailand's position with respect to numbers from China relative to other destinations, relative to Singapore, Indonesia, and so forth and so forth. So by taking a complete matrix of all of the arrival data for all of the destinations within Asia Pacific, it becomes an easy task through this mechanism to simply flip that matrix and focus more on the origin market rather than the destination. And this obviously becomes very useful in trying to determine who's performing better than average, who's performing under average, and so forth. So these are very, very top-level numerics that give us an indication of who's going where. Now, do you want to try and set it up so we can see all the arrivals into Thailand, for example? First thing you do is go to multiple to one, you go and select the destination, so you clear all, select Thailand, then you select the origins, and let's have a look at just Northeast Asia. Just click on the Northeast Asia countries. So there's Northeast Asia. You can go back into your select origins, and you can click on all of the Northeast Asian countries. And lo and behold, there you have it. So you can see here we're talking about multiple origin sources coming into Thailand. And we've got them not just by the grouping of Northeast Asia, the solid blue bar, but then it's further broken down. In fact, you can get rid of Northeast Asia, as we did before, just by clicking on the legend, and there you have it. So we've got China, Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, and Chinese Taipei coming into Thailand over a 3-year period. So that gives us a good solid base on which to start. But more and more, the plain numbers crossing a border are becoming less important than the actual value of those travellers. And this is where we go down into expenditures. This is another category, as you can see on the left. Now, what's intriguing here is that we don't always have up-to-date data. You can see here that where we're talking this particular chart, Thailand, the last data that we have access to is 2009. Is 2010. And you can see that we haven't quite got the average daily expenditure up there, simply because we haven't got all the variables to be able to calculate that at this stage. Now, two things when we talk about the actual value of a tourist. It depends very much on whether a destination is reporting on tourism receipts or visitor expenditure, because there is a difference, and it is imperative that you understand how a particular destination actually records its expenditures. In the broadest sense of things, if you talk about the World Bank figures, for example, on international visitor expenditures, then they are talking very much about international tourism receipts. And receipts differ, or can differ, because they may very well include payments to national carriers for international transport. They can also include other payments or payments afterwards that are made for goods and services actually received in the destination country. So it's a little bit more extensive than that of travel expenditure, and you do really need to understand the differences if you're comparing expenditures across countries. If you're simply looking at expenditures within a country, then obviously the collection mechanism remains the same generally from year to year, and so you can certainly see the growth or decline parameters over time within the destination. Have we got any questions thus far? I can't read that. I don't know what it says. No questions so far. Okay. Well, let's take you through another area that is of particular importance and interest, perhaps, because this is all historic. This all tells us what happened in the past. And whilst that's useful for generating some picture of the future, we really need a better feel for, well, what does all of this mean in terms of the next year or the next couple of years or so forth. And so if we go back to the forecast arrivals, you see that we have currently forecasts, and this is international arrivals into Thailand for the years 2012, 13 and 14. Now a word on these forecasts. You can see from the source line on your screen that these come from the PATA's Asia Pacific Tourism Forecasts, and these are produced for us annually by Professor Lindsay Turner and Professor Stephen Witt. Now anyone who has spent any time studying econometrics will know both those names. They are recognized globally as being experts in the econometric modeling of tourism demand, and using their proprietary CITIA model over the last 10 years we have refined the processes and the mechanisms down to the point where we utilize not only quantitative data being fed into the model but also qualitative assessments. And that second area is very important because models don't know exactly what's going on in the real wide world. They take all of the data you feed in and project some sort of output. And I have personally, in fact, seen projections where you knew they were impossible simply because there was not enough accommodation stock in a destination to actually support forecasts of a particular level. So the econometric process, the CITIA model, and the qualitative component together has vastly improved the accuracy of these forecasts to the point that at the aggregate level we normally run between plus or minus 5% of actual. And when you consider that's across 40 destinations, that is a fairly good picture. Obviously for some destinations we're much closer to within 1 or 2%, as in the case of China. Others where there's greater volatility, particularly in some of the smaller Pacific Island nations, we may be plus or minus 15, plus or minus 20. But the volume going to some of those smaller destinations, when compared to the massive volumes going into destinations like China, generally offset each other, so that at the aggregate level we tend to do, as I said before, plus or minus 5%. Now this is a similar format to what you would have seen with the overall arrivals, the historic arrivals at least, in as much as we have the bar or the block which indicates the actual volume. Here, for example, we're suggesting that Thailand is on track to receive about 21.3 million in 2012, jumping to over 25 million by 2014. And if you look at the red line, which is the percentage growth, and compare that to the right-hand axis, you'll see that we're seeing that even though the numbers are increasing, the actual rate of growth appears to be diminishing. This is a function of the actual volume. So you can see that in 2012, we're talking about 11.5% increase. By 2013, it'll come down to 9.7, and by 2014, about 7.2. The reality is that as the numeric base gets larger and larger and larger, the percentage increase year on year will appear to diminish simply because of the difference in the volume. Doesn't mean that demand is diminishing or that interest is flagging in that destination. It's in many cases purely a function of the fact that the measurement base has increased substantially. And we see this in the case of China. If you can call up the same forecast for China, I'll show you what we mean by that. So again, it's a similar picture. You can see that if you follow the red line through, There is 2.43, in 2013 2.6, and then by 2014 2.4. But the base has jumped from 138.7 million to 145.7 million. So when you're talking about a 2% increase on a base of 140 million, that is a substantial increase in actual visitors into China. So you need to look at the percentage growth rates with a certain attitude and a certain awareness that the actual numeric base is of particular importance. We can do this also by sub-region. So if you can, for example, follow the cursor here, where we're going to select a destination as, Northeast Asia, for example. And you can see that this is the prediction we have for the next 3 years into Northeast Asia, which is comprised, if you just go back up and look at the destination and open up Northeast Asia, you can see in that definition of Northeast Asia, we include China, Chinese Taipei, Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, Macau, and Mongolia. So again, we have a mechanism whereby we can examine the history, and we can also then project at some point out to the future. We're just clicking on a new area, source markets. My fingers are not working too well today. Okay, let's go back to IVAs by origin market. Okay. So if we want to look at the historic base of traffic by origin, in this case we're looking at multiple sources into Thailand out of Northeast Asia. Bear in mind again that these data can be sent to your own file, either as a graphic, as we have it here, or if you really want to include that into your own graphics or your own reports and so forth, you can export that to a comma-separated variable file, a CSV file. And if we do that, and then have a look at what the CSV file looks like, you'll see there's the actual data, 2009, 2010, and 2011, and you can see what that looks like. Okay. Apologies for jumping all over the place. I think someone's got a trigger finger that's that's a little bit twitchy. Some of the other uses, as I mentioned earlier, when we talk about IBAs by origin market, if we do again the wonder multiple, we can begin to see some interesting developments if we go and then select the origins. And if we go into the Americas, if we go into, say, South America, open up, and click, say, Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. Okay, your wonder multiple, we want multiple to 1, Clearing all, opening up South America, and do Argentina, Brazil, and Chile. Okay, and this is for Thailand. Now, it's a very quick way of seeing which emerging markets, they may only be small numerically. For example, if we look here at Argentina, we see it's only 7,450, but it's jumping to 12,500. And Brazil going from 17,650 to 24,740. It nevertheless begins to show us, well, why are they coming here? How are they getting here? we're recording them by nationality. Do they actually live in Brazil? And you begin to use the data to ask yourself questions about what is this telling me? Who are they? How are they getting here? Is this a market really worth watching? And as you'll find out in future webinars, when you start to overlay these sorts of actually arrived at the destination type data on things like air capacity and air access and air routes, you begin to see that, okay, there might be potential here. Perhaps I should consider allocating some of my resources into these origin markets because they're obviously coming here. How can we induce them to come to my property or my region or take my tour and so forth and so forth. With a mechanism such as PATA mPOWER, you can do this very, very easily, very, very quickly, which means that you can process an enormous amount of data just by clicking on the appropriate origin destination fields. And that really is the true power, we believe, of a mechanism like this. It won't necessarily answer your questions, but it does give you opportunity to ask those questions based on fact, based on reality. We can also take this further and we can then begin to project what do the forecasts look like out of Argentina and Brazil into Thailand. And Kun Aim is going to take you through with the cursor and show you how to do that. So we're looking at Argentina and Brazil into Thailand. Slow down so people can follow you, yeah? Argentina, Brazil. Okay, so here you can see that, wow, look at that. We've actually got very steady growth in both of them. So that by 2014, all of a sudden, Brazil is predicted to be getting up to close on 35,000 and Argentina close on, what's that, click on the roll over so I can see what the figure is, yeah, 18,426. So this is where it can be particularly useful. Now, if we're looking here at Brazil, we can go in and we can say, well, let's look at Brazil as an origin going into all of the countries of Southeast Asia. And we'll show you how to do that. One to multiple, select origin, clear all your other settings, go into South America and just pick Brazil. So it doesn't want to connect to the internet and so on. So we want to select the destination as being, we've got one to multiple, we've got Brazil, and we want the destination here. It's the whole Asia Pacific. But this is also Africa, so we need to go and reset here all. Destinations, yeah. Clear. Southeast Asia. No, clear. We're trying to go into open Southeast Asia. And click on Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos. And we've got another technical issue. Yeah, put Thailand in. Okay. What it's telling us there is that for the other countries that we first listed within that multiple destination, they either have zero from Brazil, which is possibly unlikely, or it's grouped in another category, which is all other countries. So if we go back into destinations and click all of those countries within the Southeast Asia grouping, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Vietnam. And you start to see those that do have it and those that don't have it. So we've got Philippines and Thailand. We can get rid of Southeast Asia, their nationality as well. So they're the only ones that at this stage are recording Brazil as a specific origin market for forecasting purposes, at least I should say. Now, even though a destination may have data on actual arrivals up to 2011 from an origin like Brazil, it may be that it has only appeared on their radar for the last 3 or 4 years. If it has not been there consistently for a 10-year period, our forecasting model will reject it. We do need a long history to actually produce out even on a 3-year period, which is why in this case it's only showing up for Thailand and for the Philippines. But again, this at least will tell you what is happening in terms of the data that's being released and reported on by the actual destination. So the things to remember there are, if it is not recorded, then it won't appear. If it doesn't have a long enough time series in the forecasts, it will not appear. And we need to also, even in the forecasts, be very cautious as to whether it's referring to country of residence or country of nationality. And I know that for a fact because as an Australian living in Thailand for the last 15 years, when I travel to some destinations, I'm still recorded as an Australian, and to others, I'm recorded as a Thai. So expats are a little bit of a different breed in that respect, but generally speaking, that doesn't have an impact any more than a few percentage points. The vast bulk of travellers are normally nationals from the country of residence. There will be some variance on that. We know, for example, that India has more than 20 million nationals living abroad, and of course they travel back home. Philippines have an enormous number of workers living overseas who travel back home. And again, depending upon whether they are recorded as nationality, country of residence, or in fact a returning national, will affect some of those figures. So that's really what we wanted to take you through today, was to show that the PATA mPOWER machinery, even though it's still developing, it's currently at a workable stage whereby you can actually log on, move through various data sets. You don't have to worry about code. You don't have to worry about weightings and all these various procedures. You simply tell it, I want to know who from this origin country went to these destination countries over this period of time, and so forth. So it allows you to play strategic what-ifs based on real numeric data that's as up-to-date as we can possibly get it to you. Our aim is that within 24 hours of us receiving an update from a particular destination, we'll have that loaded. So this is first to market data in many respects. So I'm going to ask my colleagues here if they've got any comments to make on the utility of the system, starting with Kun Aim. What do you think about all this, Kun Aim?
I think it's very informative and it's very useful. So you can know like number of visitor arrival to your destination, your country, and like what you want to know. You can find out from this.
And Kun Aim? Kun Aim's shaking her head. She doesn't want to say anything. Okay. We've got a couple of questions. One here is from Alex Rayner, who unfortunately has left us, and he's asking us, what's the difference between arrivals defined by PATA to tourists defined by the UNWTO? That's a very good question. The UNWTO tend to refer mainly to tourists, and they are defined as people who cross an international border but stay in that place for less than 12 months, do not receive any remuneration for work while they're in that place, and certainly, obviously, are therefore overnighters, at least one night overnight. What we tend to refer to at PATA is a visitor, someone who crosses an international border. Now, that may be for one day. It may not even be overnight, but we still include them because we tend to regard the travellers more as a unit of economic worth. And every time there is a border crossing, there is some economic impact. That individual would have had to have had a passport, in some cases would have had to have had a visa, utilised some form of transport to get there, and some form of transport to get back. So there is some economic impact. This does not mean it's always positive for the destination either. The economic impact could be that they actually arrive and then they depart actually taking more with them than they left behind in terms of expenditure. Alex also asks, why don't the two organisations use the same term? And again, it's largely what your mandate is. From a PATA perspective, we're interested in the value, the economic value. It's a business proposition as we see it. So what we're trying to do is to build the business of our members, and by focusing on the economic values and the economic impacts, we believe we're in a better position to do that. What I mean by this is that not all travellers are alike. So you may have an extraordinary increase in the number of arrivals from one country and a lesser increase in arrivals from another. But from country A, they may stay one night and spend $100. From country B, the lesser growth rate, they might stay 10 nights and spend $1,000. So you can see that the two sets of statistics, one had more arrivals, which is a good statistic, but the other measure, the length of stay and ultimately the expenditure, is far greater in that group B, if you will. This is what we're focusing on. But the two are compatible to some degree, because what we ultimately look for is the direction of growth or decline and the strength of that. That gives us an idea as to, well, hey, this is really looking very good. Brazil's looking pretty strong. It's growing very strongly. What are Brazilians worth? When they actually arrive at a destination like Thailand, what's their spend? What's their economic impact? Do they just come to Bangkok, or do they look around? They go down to Phuket, to Krabi, up to Chiang Mai, to Chiang Rai, and so forth. What's the real impact in economic terms and social terms on the destination? So we believe that both play a very important role. Obviously, from the UNWTO definition, it gives a great deal of information for planners about, with these volumes coming and staying overnight, do we have enough beds, do we have enough hotels, what are our built facilities like, and so forth. From our point of view, we're looking more at how to optimise the return from any expenditure in an origin market. Long answer, I apologise for that, but one worth going through, because there are, obviously, as you can hear, substantial differences. Do we have any other questions? No further questions. In that case, on behalf of all four of us sitting here looking at the screen in Bangkok, I would like to say thank you very much for your time and your attention. If you have any queries that you'd like answers to, please feel free to contact us here at and someone's scribbling down for me, at mpower@parta.org. That's mpower@parta.org. Thank you very much, and we'll take this further next week. Thank you all.